Have you ever wondered if there's a master key to the Bible? You know, a single framework that claims to unlock these profound secrets that have been hidden in its pages for centuries? Well, that's exactly what we're diving into today, a system of thought that promises to solve some of Scripture's biggest puzzles.
Okay, so first things first. Before we can get to the secrets, we have to understand the tool this framework provides. It's presented as this absolutely essential key, and without it, the rest of this stuff supposedly remains completely locked away.
And let's be honest, this is a question that trips a lot of people up, right? You read one passage that seems to say one thing, and another that says the complete opposite. It can be super confusing. This framework claims that the confusion isn't a flaw in the text itself, but actually a misunderstanding of how we're supposed to read it.
So the solution that's put on the table is this method called correctly cutting the word of truth. Now, according to the source material, this isn't just a friendly suggestion, it's a command. The whole idea is that if you don't use this specific interpretive lens, the text can get so twisted that it stops being truth and becomes, well, something else entirely.
So how in the world do you correctly cut? Well, this framework breaks it down into 3 dimensions or 3 questions you always have to ask. First, who was this written to? Was it for the Israelites or for the Gentiles? Second, when was it written for? Is this for a past era or right now? And third, what's the perspective? Is this an absolute, universal truth, or is it relative to a specific situation? These 3 questions, they form the key we're going to be using for the rest of this explainer.
All right, so we've got our key. Let's see what it unlocks. The first big secret this framework talks about is what it calls the secret administration. And the argument here is that the very age we're living in right now operates under a set of rules that were totally hidden for most of human history. But why? Why keep something so important a secret? The source gives one primary reason: to protect the morale of ancient Israel. The idea is that if God's full plan had been revealed way back then, it would have been incredibly discouraging for them and it would have totally undermined the specific earthly mission they were given.
And wow, this is where you can really see the 2 paths diverge. Israel's calling, as it's understood from their scriptures, was very tangible, right? It was about an earthly kingdom, righteousness that came from both faith and works, and these incredible, observable, miraculous signs. But the secret calling for this new group, the body of Christ, is completely different. We're talking heavenly authority, righteousness that comes from pure grace alone, and invisible spiritual gifts like faith, hope, and love.
So the big takeaway here is that this secret age supposedly reveals a whole different side of God's character. The focus shifts dramatically to unconditional love. Even faith itself is seen as a gift you receive, not something you work up. The cross becomes this great equalizer for everyone, and the scope of God's plan just explodes, from being about just the earth to covering the entire cosmos.
Okay, now we're moving on to the second secret, and this is where things get, well, a lot more provocative. This part redefines where the biggest spiritual danger is actually hiding in the world today. This quote from the source material, from A.E. Conch, just cuts right to the chase. The argument is that evil's best trick isn't to be obvious and scary, but to disguise itself as something righteous. So, according to this framework, there's a secret of lawlessness at work, and its whole job is to present a false God in Jesus. The source claims that the biggest deception isn't hiding in bars or casinos, or the places society says are bad. Instead, it's concealed inside religious systems that look totally devout on the outside, leading people astray even while they think they're serving God.
And the framework lays out the stakes with this really stark choice, this confrontation matrix. On the one hand, it says mainstream religion can offer you short-term benefits. You know, you keep your reputation, your friends, your community, but the long-term cost it claims is enormous. On the other hand, embracing this truth might mean losing all that stuff in the short term, but the reward is what the source calls Iconian life. That is, life in the ages to come.
And to really drive this point home, the source uses a pretty unforgettable analogy. It paints the entire established church system as this magnificent, beautiful ship that's sinking. The only way to be safe, it argues, is to abandon that ship and get into the lifeboat of this revealed truth.
All right, let's bring this all together for the final secret. And this one is, by far, the biggest and most expansive. This reveals what the framework calls the ultimate cosmic purpose of God.
So, for centuries, the understanding from the Hebrew scriptures was pretty straightforward. The Messiah was going to come, set up a kingdom, rule from David's throne, and bring peace to the nations of the earth. That was the known plan.
But here's the secret. The hidden truth was that this whole picture was, in the source's own words, gigantically pulled up. The Messiah's reign wasn't just about planet Earth.
The true, mind-bending scope of his authority is the entire universe, everything, visible and invisible. So how do you even wrap your head around a plan that big? Well, the framework uses one last, really profound analogy to tie it all together: marriage. It says that the bond between a husband and a wife isn't just a human institution. It's actually a physical picture, like a little model of a much, much greater spiritual reality. And that leaves us with this final, really thought-provoking question from this whole framework. What if our deepest, most intimate human bond, this search for love and connection, is really just a shadow, a faint echo of an ultimate cosmic relationship between God and all of creation?